Yo, fam, listen up, because what I'm about to tell you is one of the wildest, most insane fraud stories you will ever hear in your life. This is the type of story that makes you question the entire financial system and wonder how one man can outsmart entire banks, governments, and international authorities. I'm talking about the infamous fake airport scam in Nigeria, a story that shook the banking world and earned Emmanuel Nwude a place in the Hall of Fame for conmen. Strap yourself in because this one is long, detailed, and full of twists that you won't believe. It all starts with a man named Nelson Sakaguchi. He was a bank executive at one of the largest banks in Brazil, Banco Noroeste, and his life was about to change in ways he could never imagine. One day, Nelson received a call. Not just any call, but a call that promised him the opportunity of a lifetime. On the other end of the line was someone claiming to be the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, a man who wanted to develop the country by building a major international airport in Abuja, the new capital of Nigeria. The project was massive. We're talking about a world-class airport, unlike anything the country had ever seen. According to the governor, the project would cost $242 million, and Nelson would receive a $10 million commission just for investing. At this point, Nelson's heart was racing. He thought he had stumbled onto the investment deal of the century. They set up a meeting in London. Nelson flew in, and there he shook hands with the supposed governor, the deputy governor, and the director of aviation. They presented business plans, infrastructure details, construction proposals, the whole 9 yards. Nelson was completely convinced. He saw it as a home run investment. There was just one problem. It was all a lie. A complete, audacious, meticulously planned lie. The mastermind behind this was Emmanuel Nwude. Now, there's some mystery about Emmanuel's early life. Sources suggest he was born somewhere between 1950 and 1955 in the bustling heart of Lagos, Nigeria. From a young age, Emmanuel had aspirations that were anything but modest. He wanted to escape poverty and live a life of wealth, power, and influence. He was smart, extremely gifted, and had an insatiable hunger for success. While most kids were worrying about school, Emmanuel was already thinking about how to dominate the world of finance. As a young adult, Emmanuel ventured into banking. It wasn't long before he made a name for himself thanks to his sharp intellect, charm, and charisma. He climbed the ranks at the Union Bank of Nigeria and eventually became the director. At this point, he was no longer living in poverty. He had a respectable position, a solid income, and social status. But for Emmanuel, that wasn't enough. He wanted more. The kind of money that could buy influence, open doors, and make people respect or fear him. It was during the early 1990s that Emmanuel spotted the perfect opportunity. Nigeria had recently declared Abuja as its new capital, a decision that sparked a frenzy of economic development. Large-scale infrastructure projects were the priority, and the government wanted to build a world-class international airport. Emmanuel saw this as the golden ticket to his dreams. But rather than building it, Emmanuel came up with a scheme so audacious it would become legendary. He decided to sell a fake airport. To pull this off, he couldn't do it alone. Emmanuel handpicked a team of 5 skilled individuals, each an expert in banking and finance. They all played a part, impersonating high-ranking officials to convince investors that everything was legitimate. Each member knew their role to perfection, from faking documents to delivering persuasive presentations. The first step of the scam involved sending detailed faxes to banks around the world. These faxes appeared official, coming from a made-up Nigerian official named Teristia William, supposedly working in the financial planning and budgeting department of the Nigerian Ministry of Aviation. The faxes announced Nigeria's plan to build a major airport in Abuja, a city rapidly growing since being declared the capital in 1991. Days went by, and at first, it seemed like no one was interested. Then came the breakthrough. Nelson Sakaguchi from Banco Noroeste responded. He expressed keen interest, claiming his bank had been looking for new investment opportunities for some time. When Emmanuel read the fax, a smirk appeared across his face. The plan was now in motion. Emmanuel called Nelson immediately. But he couldn't just be himself. That would never work. He had to appear as someone of authority and trust. So he impersonated the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Paul Oguma. Keep in mind, this was before the rise of the internet, So there was no easy way for Nelson to verify Emmanuel's identity. With his charm and persuasive skills, Emmanuel convinced Nelson that the deal was legitimate. To maintain the illusion, Emmanuel suggested they meet somewhere neutral, outside Nigeria and Brazil. Nelson proposed London. Emmanuel agreed. Every detail of the meeting was meticulously planned. Emmanuel assumed the role of governor, while the others played the deputy governor and the director of aviation. They prepared fake business proposals, airport plans, and supporting documents to reinforce the illusion. When the team arrived in London, they pulled out all the stops. A limousine picked up Nelson from the airport, and he was accommodated in a luxurious five-star suite, allegedly compliments of the governor of the central bank. At the meeting, the team exuded confidence, charm, and authority. Nelson bought every word. Emmanuel told him the project needed to remain confidential and that construction would not begin for another 4 to 5 years. Nelson said his bank would be ready to transfer funds when the project started. But Emmanuel, being a smooth talker, insisted they needed the money immediately for preliminary planning, including hiring companies and acquiring materials. Nelson hesitated, but Emmanuel eased his doubts, claiming there were other investors ready to fund the project if he backed out. To sweeten the deal, Emmanuel offered Nelson a $10 million commission if he could finalize the deal himself. Nelson, fearing he'd miss out on a major opportunity, agreed. Over the next 3 years, from 1995 to 1998, Nelson transferred $242 million to Emmanuel and his team. They cleverly spread the transfers across 17 banks in different countries, keeping the trail clean. Unlike many fraudsters who would splurge on cars or yachts, Emmanuel and his team invested in real estate in Nigeria and abroad, bought shares in various companies, and sent Nelson fake documents to reassure him the project was progressing. By the end, they had successfully executed one of the most audacious frauds in history, but the empire of deception couldn't last forever. In 1998, Jamie Lopez, a director at Banco Noroeste, was frustrated. The bank was being acquired by the largest bank in Spain for $500 million, but a significant portion of the bank's capital seemed to have vanished. All signs pointed to Nelson Sakaguchi. Nelson was confronted. Initially, he stalled, but when pressed, he admitted everything, the full details of the $242 million fake airport deal. The bank board was enraged. This revelation triggered an international investigation into what would become the third largest banking fraud in history. Investigators traced the scam back to Nigeria, but Nigerian banks initially refused to cooperate. Behind the scenes, Emmanuel and his team had bribed officials to ensure silence. Eventually, pressure from Western banks forced Nigeria to reveal their account holders, exposing Emmanuel and his accomplices. Meanwhile, Nelson was arrested and charged with money laundering, serving several years in prison. The bank's owners tried to recover the funds, but found that most of the money had been wisely invested in real estate and companies, leaving little for restitution. Fast forward to 2003, a new Nigerian president established a Financial Crimes Commission. By 2004, 5 members of Emmanuel's team were arrested. But the 6th member, he mysteriously died in a car crash during the investigation. Was it an accident, or did Emmanuel orchestrate it to protect the team? The truth remains unknown. Emmanuel's trial was a spectacle. He bribed officials and jurors, forcing the judge to relocate the trial to another city. He even staged a fake bomb threat to delay proceedings. At one point, he offered to return $10 million of the stolen funds, but authorities demanded $80 million. Eventually, facing testimony from his former friend Nelson, Emmanuel agreed to pay $120 million plus a $10 million fine. He was sentenced to 25 years but used his cunning to bribe his way into serving less than 2 years. Emmanuel then recovered nearly $50 million from his real estate investments, proving that even after the scam, he had a way to come out on top. He laid low for years, enjoying a luxurious life. But by 2016, Emmanuel faced murder charges related to a land dispute in Oppo. He allegedly sent over 200 men to attack residents, resulting in deaths, including a security guard. He is currently in custody awaiting trial. But knowing Emmanuel, it's only a matter of time before he finds another way to bend the system. Fam, the story of Emmanuel Nwude is one for the history books. From a young boy in Lagos dreaming of wealth, to a banker, to one of the most notorious conmen in history, his story has everything: charm, intellect, audacity, deception, and a twist of brilliance. He didn't just scam a bank, he scammed the world, proving that sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. If you've enjoyed this breakdown of the craziest airport scam ever, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this channel is all about exposing the wildest stories of fraud, crime, and the people who dare to challenge the system. And just when you think it's over, remember, Emmanuel Nwude is a living legend of the scam world, and knowing his history, he's probably cooking up another story somewhere, waiting for the right time to strike. Stay alert, fam. This world is full of opportunities, some real, some too wild to believe.